So let's get a quick run through on what's going to happen today. So we're going to have 1 hour and 30 minutes together. We have our amazing speaker, Vlad, here with us. Can wave to people. I mean, you're the only other person kind of sharing their screen. So we're super happy to have you. And thank you so much for agreeing to join this iteration of the VMUG.
Just going to close the window.
Yeah, let's just close the window so you don't get weird sounds. So let's just see how many people have joined. And Vlad is an extremely talented individual that I've personally had a chance to meet a while ago, and I can vouch for him when I'm saying it. I'm 100% convinced that he's an amazing software engineer. He's an extremely sharp and brilliant person, and I really hope you're going to enjoy what he's going to share with us today, because we found out that he's been using Miro by complete accident. And when we heard the amazing things that he's doing with Miro, we said, you know what, we have to have you on our VMUG. So we're going to take over the screen and share our screen. But what you also have to be aware of is that we will be working in a Miro board. So if you haven't received that yet, let me just send out a link to everyone. You can join without having to open an account. So I'm just pasting here a Miro board link for you to follow. And just for the first few parts until we have the exercises, we'll ask you to follow our screen as we're sharing. So we're going to start screen sharing now. And we're going to run you through the first few bits of our slides. So we'd like to start off by giving Vlad the chance to introduce himself. So Vlad, if you can tell everyone a little bit about yourself, the magic that you do, and the kind of work you spend your time on.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for the introduction. Firstly, that's quite an introduction you've made for me. I'm glad you feel that way. If I were to briefly describe what I'm doing, I'm sort of like coding 50% of the time, and 50% of the time talking and working with people. And I've been doing this for quite a while. I think I started when I was 16, and now I'm close to 30. I'm actually turning 30 years old tomorrow.
Yay! Early happy birthday.
Thank you. It's gonna be interesting tomorrow. It's gonna be interesting tomorrow because I won't be doing anything. I'll be staying at home. But anyway, I guess that's the case for most people that have birthdays in this month.
Yeah,
we have plenty of GIFs for you.
Exactly.
For
you're gonna be reviewing the recording to see how well you've done.
Okay. No pressure. So no pressure based on the introduction. No pressure based on this. That's great. That's great, man. I'm working mostly with JavaScript and TypeScript. So I'm a full stack developer, and I've been building web applications mostly. So mostly interactive stuff like Miro, for example. I've been with some startups from the United States. I've worked in London a little bit. I worked as a contractor for some bigger companies. So I've kind of mixed and matched and switched a little bit, and saw how many companies have different ways of handling their processes and the way they organize themselves. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, the things that I'll probably talk about are a bit informed from a couple of other places that I've worked at in my career. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it. And I like Nutella and coffee.
Yeah, we really loved your description when we posted up the event. Yeah. So that's a really straightforward starter to kick off your description with. And tell us a little bit about teleportHQ and what you do there and what the company does.
I would like to talk about that. I mean, yeah, I have a slide for that, but I guess we can.
Oh, okay, go for it. Then we'll do that in the presentation.
We're super excited because it's the first time we have a software engineer on board for these kind of events, and we're super excited to see how you use Miro. So just a couple of tips and tricks before we continue our session. We have here a couple of actions for you to just check in case you are finding some issues. So to duplicate an item, you just Control or Command D for voting. We're gonna start a voting session at the end. Pointer and pan, this depending on what type of device you're using. You can either use your mouse or your finger. And then obviously if you want to undo an undesired action, you can do it from the top. There's an arrow, Raz can show you, or you can obviously do that from the keyboard by using Control or Command and Z.
Yeah. So the reason why we're going through these kind of tips and tricks on Miro is probably if you're here for the first time, you don't even know how to navigate these waters, because we're gonna have a quick icebreaker exercise just to get a chance to let you familiarize yourself with Miro and some of the features that they have in here. So if you can open the board now and kind of follow our cursor when it says the icebreaker and the blue section with the map on it, everyone can join in here. I want to do a quick exercise, kind of reiterating the trick that we did in a chat box, but now on the Miro board. So what we're going to kindly ask you to do is use the icon finder in Miro. We can open it up by clicking on the left-hand side on the 3 dots at the bottom of the control panel. Open that up, click on icon finder, and type in an icon that represents you and the place you're tuning in from, and then place that on the map in the space that you're joining us from. Just let's do that together now for
and this is not a geography test, right? I mean,
no.
Yeah, it kind of is.
I mean, yeah, it depends how confident you are in your geography skills. I mean, if you find it challenging to find your country on the map, it could be a good cue for you to do a quick recap of your basic geography. So just put one there.
Or if you make the icon big enough, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, just make the icon as big as Europe, and then people can just figure it out by themselves.
I'm a ninja hidden behind that vampires.
Okay, you're hiding behind the. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I'm not really sure if I'm in Hungary right now or in Romania, but I think that's generally.
It's a mute map. It's a mute map. You should. Oh, we have some. I'm assuming that's the Netherlands with the windmill, right?
Most probably.
Trying to figure that out. Oh, actually, it isn't. Is it? Oh, there we go. Because looking at it, that feels more like Germany. And like the bike and the windmill. That's perfect. All right. What else? Although this is the EMA region, we have
an
some
early bird.
Yeah, we have a puppy. Have a puppy here in the United States. Someone plays themselves in the water. Oh, and garlic. Is that the garlic meant to be against my vampire in Romania?
Actually, we have a funny story with this one. So whenever there's Halloween and we do not know what costume to use, we just take a bunch of garlic and put it as a necklace, and we say that we're trying to keep our family away from us.
So Netherlands.
That story. It's the first time I'm hearing.
Yeah, me too. So let's see. All right, everyone managed to tell us where they're coming from? All right. One last quick exercise for you folks before we move on with our presentation is you can use C on your keyboard to add a comment, or use the left-hand side panel. It's the 4th icon from the bottom. It says comment, and just click on that, or use the C on your keyboard to place a comment right near your icon and tell us where, just tell us your name and your exact location, because I'm seeing so many people in the Netherlands area, and we probably want to make a quick distinction. So let's just click on C on the comment box on the left-hand side, or use your keyboard shortcut to tell us where you are. So Raz and Anna, Cluj. There we go.
Berlin. Okay.
Yeah, Berlin, Amsterdam. We have Cheryl from London.
Cluj again.
Clyde from DC. Toronto, Gloria. Perfect.
Awesome.
We have Jaya, we see you put a ghosty thing in India. Awesome.
JK is a colleague from Teleport.
Oh, nice. Nice to meet you.
Some of my colleagues joining to see how much information I reveal based on what we're doing.
Yeah, they're here to assess the level of how bad you break your NDA. So
yeah.
no
I
pressure.
have to be really careful with screenshots, only to screenshots parts that don't involve other people or
Gotcha.
mentions from other people.
Typically a good practice. All right, perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for chiming in with your emojis and icons and comments on the map. It's nice to see such a great spread. Now, let's move on to the second section. And if you want, you're free to follow our cursor in the Miro board, or alternatively, you can just sit back, relax. It's happy hour in some places of the world, so you can enjoy a glass of wine while we follow the presentation, and you can just watch the screen sharing bit. We have an area here where if you have any questions that you want to ask now before the presentation, any curiosities that you have around the topic, feel free to add them here. We're going to have plenty of time for Q&A afterwards, so don't feel obligated to do that now. It's just a place for you to take any notes or questions that might come up. So keep that in mind. They have that here. And without further ado, we will stop screen sharing and allow Vlad to take over the screen and walk us through his presentation. Vlad, the virtual microphone is all yours.
Thank you. I'm gonna look for the share screen button. Hopefully I'll find it. Oh, there we go. It's the big red one.
Perfect. We can see your screen. Before we kickstart, everyone, keep in mind that if you have questions, you can add them either in the Miro board if you feel you like that more, or just drop them in the chat in Zoom. And at the end, we're going to moderate through some of the questions and make sure to get them answered. So, Vlad, it's all you now.
Okay, thanks. Hello again. I'm happy to be here. Mostly because I like playing in Miro and doing stuff with it. I want to start with a short story about how I started to use this tool, and then walk you through how we started using it at Teleport. As Razvan already mentioned, I heard about Miro by accident from a couple of people, actually. Anna and Razvan actually told me first, I think. Then my girlfriend also mentioned it because she heard about it from somewhere else. And I think it was a third person, a product manager from some other company that mentioned it. And it kind of stuck with me, some sort of information about doing mind maps in Miro, like you could do also mind maps. So if I heard from 3 or 4 people about it, I thought to myself, maybe I could try to do a mind map at one point. And I think it was a Saturday in the weekend when I, sorry, let me just close that. When I thought to myself, let's try drawing a mind map. And it went okay. 50 minutes went by, and it wasn't like a great experience. It just did the mind map and it was okay. But then something happened. I don't know how, but I inserted, I think by accident, a flow chart. And that flow chart looked kind of pretty. And I was like, wait, I can have a flow chart near a mind map. I'm not used to that. I mean, usually I'm used to having a tool that only has mind maps and then that's it. And that flow chart also looked kind of pretty. You know, I was amazed by how easily or how little things we needed to build that flow chart. Usually when I have a tool that builds diagrams or flow charts, there's like a lot of things in the sidebar, like lots and lots of drag and droppable entities and all that. And that kind of sparked something inside my mind. It made me think like I could procrastinate in this tool. I could actually spend a lot of time just playing and throwing a bunch of ideas on this board and see where it goes. And they started a little feedback loop in that weekend where I would just drag and drop things and play around. And I discovered most of the use cases that way, like how to resize, how to drag, how to copy paste. I discovered that you can post YouTube links inside the board. And then my mind just blowed. It's like, okay, I can do a lot of things. Now I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on something that I have on my notebooks. And this is how I usually dump ideas down. I have a notebook, a student's notebook, and I just write things down when I feel like it, when creativity strikes. And if we look at the board, the main slide, you can see that the thing that I'm drawing here in Miro is very similar actually to the way my mind usually works normally, which kind of struck the chord for me. And I was completely sold on using Miro for fun and also for work afterwards. Because if we take a look at something that I'm going to talk about later, this is something that I ended up building for work because I simply liked working in Miro in that particular weekend. So I got hooked pretty quickly to using Miro. Now, let's get to the part of how we got to use Miro at Teleport. So I really liked Miro. I like to spend a lot of time in Miro, but my colleagues didn't know much about this wonderful tool. We often had discussions, technical discussions, actually weekly discussions about how to improve the tool, how to make the tool, how to improve the project, how to make the architecture a little bit better. And in those meetings, I started to use Miro a little bit more. And what do I mean by that? The first time someone had some sort of question after I started to use Miro, I said, hey, let's open a Miro board and let me show you my thoughts about that. It turned out people liked it. I noticed sometimes when I used to go back to the board that I used to draw things and explain stuff, I noticed that other people were still using the board because you can you can click each icon here and see where people are looking, and that motivated me to create even more content in Miro. And I think 2 or 3 weekends later, because it was really fun to use and the team gave me a lot of feedback, I transformed most of the nodes that I had, which looked like this one, into wireframes that were a little bit more readable and people could comment and write notes and ask questions on it. But
well,
Vlad,
it's really impressive to see how you've kind of have this drive to make things so visual and so kind of in an orderly fashion. And like the story of how basically Miro kind of cascaded in the team is really nice, kind of showing it this way. So it's really nice.
Thank you. Before I get into actually presenting a couple of ways we're using Miro at work, I think it might be a good point to talk a little bit about the company that I work for. So you get an idea. Oh, this should not be there. Yeah, that's it. teleportHQ is a startup from Romania. We're actually a startup that has no branch in the United States or the UK. We're actually Romanian 100% so far. We're funded by the European Union and also by an outsourcing company that is basically incubating this startup. We've been around for a while, actually. I joined in 2018, and they were already working on the product then. We are 26 people at this moment, and we're split into 2 areas of focus. There's a AI/big data team that's working with lots of data and figuring things out about building websites and how to, oh, hey, leave my slides alone. What's going on? Somebody moved my slide. I guess that's the joy of real-time collaboration.
But Vlad, I think you can lock it.
Here's a pro tip. You can select the frame, like click on 04, click on the 04 title, top left.
I know it's locked, but you can still move the content inside.
Oh, if you click on the content, you can also lock that one. So I just locked it for you right now.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I don't think that's much of a problem.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so what was I? I was saying that we're split into 2 major areas. The machine learning area. Oh, come on, money later. The machine learning and the product/development side of the company. We're actually kind of trying to mix augmented or machine learning capabilities with a visual editor that allows you to build websites and web applications, basically. We're in a beta right now. You can click the link here after the presentation if you're curious. You can sign up for free and see a work in progress, but quite promising tool in my opinion. we're probably going to release something more stable by Q3 of this year. So keeping in mind that we are a startup and we're 26 people, so we're just starting to create our processes and all that, I'm going to show you how we're using Miro for the development team now. So there's three use cases that I would like to talk about. One is a big board that we have that I call the overall app architecture, which is used by most of the development team. It's like a source of truth for the entire application, mostly for the client-side application, not so much for the backend API. The backend API is a little bit more simple, so that's why it's not the core topic of the board. It also contains some sort of guidelines for building new features, and it has what I like to call the common vocabulary, or like a glossary of sorts, where most of the terms that we have and use in the company are explained there. So there's no fuzzy meanings when you talk about architecture and, for example, design patterns and so on. Then the second one is about onboarding and mentoring. Specifically, we had no process to onboard people before. It was always ad hoc, always someone on the spot would do some sort of live demo of the architecture and the way things work, and then there wasn't much documentation left afterwards. Or for mentoring, for example, there was no way of helping in a collaborative way people develop features when they weren't fully capable of developing those features. The third one would be the architecture proposals, which is probably the thing that resonates most with the title. Basically, this is like a small workshop that we can do where we gather feedback, brainstorm potential solutions or ideas, and then document the entire process and have it as, somehow a single source of truth for that particular change in the architecture, or that new feature that is quite complicated. Quite important, again, I can't stress this enough. We're still figuring things out. We're using Miro for like 2 months now, so we're still new with this. And I think one way Miro really works for us is that it allows us to be disorganized in a predictable way. I'm not sure if that sounds or makes much sense, but that's the way it kind of works for us. Right. Let's jump to the overall app architecture. Okay. So we have a weekly meeting where we talk about pain points, mostly about the current architecture. And in those meetings, every time we talked about a potential issue that we had, we often found that we're using fuzzy words and we don't really understand each other. For example, we constantly had conversations about what a controller or a service means or is on a client-side application compared to a backend, because we're mostly full stack developers. Some of our developers are backend only, some of our developers are front ends, and things could probably mean different things based on where you're at. And some design patterns don't make a lot of sense on the client side. So there was a little bit of a friction there. And there was no clear process to solve or to mitigate the friction. Let me show you specifically what I mean by that. Let's take the service issue, vocabulary issue. It kind of ended up on the whiteboard. People started discussing things. They came up with a conclusion in a way. There was probably a photo taken, which was uploaded on a Slack channel. I think I wrote some short paragraphs about what a service is and isn't in the client-side application. And then nobody ever used it. It just stopped. The entire process ended there. And the next time we had a code review with a problematic service, or we had the conversation in the weekly meetings about services, it was again fuzzy. So one of the additional issues, apart from the process and the way the fact that we're using fuzzy words, was that we are not actually using the current documentation. We use the Confluence. We're still using Confluence for many things, but it didn't really click for most of the developers. I remember constantly, sometimes asking my peers if they read the documentation. It was like, yeah, I did, but it didn't make much sense. It's like, oh, okay. So ideally, with the Miro board, we tried to solve 3 issues. The first one was to gather all the information in one place. So it's not really a cognitive effort to figure out where to find the information if it's all in one place. And apparently you can paste and copy and create a lot of information in a board before it gets quite heavy in terms of performance. We wanted something that we could build a process on, so something probably that's iterative in itself, so it can be refined while the company grows. A whiteboard, for example, drawing on a whiteboard cannot be. So even though we had photos of whiteboards in a Slack channel, that didn't really work. And ideally something that turned that forgetting about it part into something that made it used constantly and probably with pleasure or fun or something like that. And Miro was actually quite a good fit for this. I mentioned before, I like to procrastinate in Miro. So when we needed to build a new feature and also document some parts of the old architecture that needed to change and be refactored a little bit, I decided to take half a day and document everything in Miro. And it didn't look that pretty at first, but it got the job done. It got the job done. When I showcased the architecture, people got on board and it kind of became the single source of truth. It's like a huge board. I think it has issues loading on MacBook Airs at this moment, but it still loads on most of the developer hardware. People are actually writing lots of comments, asking things, or when we have meetings, they ask questions and I post them and then I try to address them, or some of my colleagues that are seniors also try to address those questions. And we're still not at the point where everybody draws all the things the same way. So probably we still have some work to be done on that part, but overall, this has been great. It made people that never contributed to the documentation before actually contribute. It made them try to draw and experiment with things on the board. Not always for the best. Sometimes they overlap things, but overall, the conversations that have started because we were all there on the same board were bigger and better than ever before. Let me show you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. One of them is the vocabulary or the glossary, where we define most of the terms that we're using, and we make sure that everybody knows that that specific term actually means the thing that we want it to mean. The service was one of the issues, the application flows, which are kind of like controllers, but not really, and it makes sense perfectly for us. Or another case that didn't make much sense for all people. And we also have some I'm not sure if you noticed, there's some color coding for them. For example, everything that's a model or a domain is with yellow. And at some point when we were brainstorming some sort of change in the flow for downloading and exporting projects, we ended up with something like this, which was not pretty, but we use the same colors as the vocabulary. So we know everything here where it should live, in what entity it needs to exist. So every functionality, for example, that's with blue, it needs to be in the flows. The green and the purple is the view, and so on. And later on, when somebody actually implemented this, they had less friction in knowing where to place the code and how to implement it. Even though we kind of describe some sort of a chaotic thing, it made sense that the person that implemented this kind of did a good job. Which kind of leads me to one of the tips. If you decide to use some sort of colors, it's quite important to stay consistent with the colors. And I'm going to show you a little bit. If I zoom out a little, you can still see the colors even though you don't really read the text, which kind of helps you zoom in where you want to zoom, or kind of makes you already think about the abstraction that you're going to be reading about, even though you haven't read the text. So it's quite nice and very simple. It's not, we did not need a specific widget or a design system configuration in Miro to do this. We just had that color from the color picker, which is already kind of like a design system right here. And we used those colors and it worked quite great. We're not using the colors actually right now everywhere. We're not really consistent, but we're getting there and it's quite useful. Another thing that's worth mentioning is the initial drawing from my notebook that I showed you, which got transformed into this. This initial drawing has been the core of the architecture board. It describes how the data in the main document that we're building visually looks like and how you can access it. And we also had a little bit of an experiment which we haven't really adopted yet, but it helped us in one or two use cases where we try to document what was going on with heavily interactive code. For example, if I move this around here, we're actually supporting drag and drop in our tool as well. There's some complex things that can happen here. For example, like the snap alignment, that is not an easy interaction to implement. And it's really easy to get it wrong and quite hard to get it right. And one of the things that we discovered is that if you have a lot of if conditions all grouped together like this, and we use the strong color for it, it's usually a place where some sort of refactoring could be needed. And just from a bird's eye view like this, we were able to see that, for example, one of the flows, the updating of some sort of content needs to be pre-thought a little bit because it's quite hard to maintain. All right. And that's pretty much it for the main board. It's quite huge, but I can show you the entire board. And yeah, moving forward to the next use case that we're having. It's for onboarding and mentoring. So as I said, since we're a startup, we had no process and no actively maintained documents for onboarding people. And what better way of creating the documents if not by having the new people that join actually contribute and help create those documents. This is one of the things that we did. We created a couple of onboarding boards for when the new juniors that joined this year were onboarded on the project. And they actually helped us build some of the content there. I'm going to show you in the next slide what we built. And another part that's quite similar, it kind of makes a click in my mind, the onboarding and the mentoring is for when people are not quite up to speed with the project. Maybe we actually had 2 colleagues join from the machine learning team, and they're working with Python mostly. So they're good developers, but they don't understand most of the React and front-end architectures that we're using. And we needed a visual way or some sort of diagrams to explain what was going on and maybe make a plan for them so that they could actually create the task, that create the code and the architecture that they needed in a more clear way. Let me show you how the client-server interaction overview looks like. This is something that we draw together, myself and the juniors. They had a couple of questions about how the server connects to the client. We're using a WebSocket. There's some complexities there. There's also Next.js application. I'm not sure if that rings any bell for anyone. And it kind of needed some clarifications which were not already in the main architecture board. the architecture board can be a little bit overwhelming because it has all that information. And for somebody new or somebody that's focusing specifically on a certain task, which is the case for a mentoring issue, they don't need to be overloaded with all that information. So ideally, a specific board with less information or more detailed information for a particular topic would be helpful. So one note here about the interaction is that I never thought that I need to mention that a particular entity, the one with the blue color, needs to be specified like that. I thought it was completely clear in my mind, but for them it wasn't, and it was quite useful to actually see it visually and make me certain later on, a week or 2 weeks later, that the information that confirms that is still here in the board. So that was quite a useful thing for the juniors. And for the ML case, because the developers were new to the tech stack, but they were capable developers, we were able to make a plan, which I like to call it iterative refactoring. So they had an experiment. They had a machine learning integration proof of concept, which allowed dragging and dropping visual elements and also integrated some of the machine learning side. And they wanted to integrate it into the main application. And the main application did not have all the technologies that they used. And we also had some of our custom technologies that needed to be integrated in their solution. It would have been quite risky to let them work for maybe 1 or 2 months without having a working version. So we came up with a visual plan, which had like 6 phases, but I couldn't show you the last 3, where we would split the proof of concept / experiment that they built into smaller deliverables. After each phase, they would have a working version that could be code reviewed, and more changes could be requested at each end of a phase. And you probably noticed that I used the same colors, not sure, but we used the exact same colors that were in the main overall architecture board. So they were able to refer to this part and see what the intention was. And they were always able to see with the same colors used in many other examples and also in the vocabulary. I think it was quite smooth. I haven't really gotten the feedback from them yet. We're about to release this machine learning integration quite soon. You will be able to basically upload a photo with a sketch, and it should be able to create an actual website, more or less like a layout in a static website from what you're drawing. That's what they worked on. Small pitch right here, but hey, it's quite cool actually. I can't wait to see it in action. Okay. So in the end, after each phase, we did some code review, we made more clarifications, and I think by the end of phase 3, they were able to integrate and use all the architecture that was available in the main project. And they were able to understand and consume information from the main board. And for the last use case, this is more like a recipe, so to speak, or something that I think we're going to be doing a lot in the coming months or year, at least here at Teleport. It's how we're doing an architecture proposal and changes, basically. Usually, people that have the authority or capability to decide major allocations of effort are involved in these kind of conversations. They're usually for complex new features or complex refactoring, even something serious and major like changing an entire tech stack or a framework. For example, if we were to move from React, which is one of the most popular Vue client-side libraries, to something else, it will probably be an architecture proposal. It's basically like a smaller board in the overall architecture. It's the single source of truth for that change. It details pretty much everything that needs to happen. It includes things from the current architecture if a refactoring is required. And there's a human component to it, which is, I think, key. it has to bring everybody together. So everyone that's working or impacted by the change should have a voice and be heard a little bit, because we might be able to gather some sort of information that was previously unclear, even for us, the people that are deciding the changes, or whether the change should happen or not. And I think the first step would be to create the context of the change. For example, if it's a new feature, we would have requirements, and that would be pretty much it. But even if a new feature, a complex new feature is received from product, there might be other features in the code base right now that are similar and maybe could be improved later on with a refactoring, or this new feature could basically be an experiment to see if we could build things a little bit better. So even if it's a new feature, it could still be an architectural proposal. It could be an exploration to see if we can do things better. Now, the second part, the second thing that's quite key, especially when refactoring, is the developer feedback. And what I mean by that is actually listening to the team and seeing what their pain points are. And the current architecture diagrams, again, are like things that are already in your application. And if they're not in the main board, if by some reason they're not already there, they should be here. Otherwise, you won't know why you're doing the changes. Let me show you how one of the developer feedback mini sessions looked like. So we were trying to change quite important part of our infrastructure, and we noted down some of the issues. Those are just a bunch of them. There were, I think, a few more. We also talked with everyone involved and noticed what their main pain points were, even though they weren't necessarily aware. So just because somebody posts all those notes doesn't mean that those are all their issues. Usually from conversations, from individual conversations and from code reviews, there could be extra information gathered. And if there's more information, there's too many notes. If somebody does too many notes in a meeting, we can always, oh, what's going on? We can always try to create some sort of tags and address multiple stickies with multiple tags and work on categories like that. For example, maybe if lots of people are complaining about the connection to the backend or some sort of third-party library, then that can become a tag and can be addressed later on. Just a second. All right. Now for the current architecture diagrams, for the part where we exemplify something that is already in the architecture, we actually use this little trick where we did a screenshot and added some sort of rectangles on top of it. And then people kind of started linking and drawing notes around that particular part that they didn't really like or understand. The current architecture diagram is like a PDF in a way. We used a lot of frames for this one. We're still experimenting, maybe we won't, but for now, if we use frames, it's probably gonna be easier to print that particular document. We described what was going on with the architecture. Again, using the same colors as before. And together, those two, the feedback that we got from both the mini retro session, if you can call it that, and the code reviews and merge requests and all that, and the architecture, we kind of had the contest ready to brainstorm or look for potential solutions. I think the main part was this, like actually knowing where the problem is and how things are in the current position, not necessarily the solution. So knowing probably what the problem is a little bit better than, a little bit more important than the actual proposal, the actual change. And something like this is the overall, the high level proposal. We posted the notes, we copy pasted the notes that were the issues that we were addressing with the architecture change. And then we got a little bit more detail with how that particular feature integrates into the entire project and infrastructure that we already have. And I think that's pretty much it, honestly. I guess I moved a little bit faster than I expected. I would like to talk a bit about why I think we're using Miro and why I think it struck a chord with a lot of people in our team. I like to use this word called cognitive load, because if we look at Miro right now and we select things, it doesn't really get into the way of what we're doing, which is not the case for most of the tools that allow people to do diagrams and wireframes and all that. Usually there's a huge sidebar somewhere with so much content that you could read like an entire article of labels and stuff like that. And it's not the case here. And that was one of the key factors that got me into using Miro a lot. And the second one was the fact that it allowed me to discover things. So I accidentally clicked this and then pasted a flow chart and said, okay, this looks cool. And that's how I started to learn about doing flow charts in Miro. And later on, I discovered some plugins. Like I think I already have one. No, okay, it doesn't show up here. So I discovered how to look for additional apps. If I'm on my boards, I can open the plugin editor and install multiple applications. So I can pretty much progressively discover more and more. So it's not like a tool that doesn't do much. It's a tool that does a lot, but it doesn't brag about it with lots of panels to choose to have options from. Now, the second thing is that flowchart looked really nice, man. I mean, showing something complex and making it look pretty wins any other type of flowchart or complex representation of information, from the simple fact that when you look at it, it's like, maybe I can look at it a little bit more. If the first impression that you have with a diagram or some sort of chart is like, ugh, what is this? It's like so hard to read and understand, then people won't use it. People won't get involved with it. They won't try to make it better. They won't ask questions. They will just try to get the information that they're looking for fast and then get out. And this is not the case for us with Miro. And the first thing that really struck a chord for me was the fact that I kind of like lost track of time a couple of times in Miro, kind of like playing computer games. So it kind of allowed me to have fun in a different way at work, because I like what I'm doing, but now I'm liking what I'm doing even more because of a tool like Miro. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I gathered 5 tips together and just a mention to have fun with the tool at the end. Again, I think color consistency is very important when creating diagrams and showcasing your ideas, especially if you have something that's critical. If you have something that's critical and needs serious attention, use very strong colors, like the way I showed you with the if statements and the nesting of multiple if statements, which was problematic. I don't really believe that we need to have some sort of global convention about writing diagrams or anything like that. There's lots of standards and lots of ways to write them. I would say probably have your own and make sure that your entire company respects that way of building your documents. The fact that we were able to add screenshots from code was pretty cool. If by some miracle we can build a plugin to annotate actual code instead of doing screenshot, that would be amazing, but this worked for us as well. And the post-it part, the notes with tags and categories actually helped, not in a developer meeting, in a different meeting for product, but it actually helped when we had like 50 or so notes. And we're definitely going to use it the next time we do an architecture proposal. So that's pretty much from my side. it was actually really fun to build this set of slides. I've never had a presentation like this.
Mm. It's actually super cool to see they have actually built it in Miro. That's something we also do, and it's just super refreshing, and you can just switch from one frame to another. So it's really great to see, and I really loved how you kind of explained it, that I like to procrastinate in Miro. So there's a little bit of the presentation which, like, us personally as non-tech people, are strangers to some of the concepts you explained, but just kind of picking up on some great points that you had in there, like color coding those components that are related. So it's really nice to see a completely different perspective from someone who's doing something different but can still leverage the power of what Miro has to bring. So that's really, really nice to see. We actually saw that there are some questions in here. So Vlad, let me just try and pick one of them and start with that. So how much effort did you have to invest to convince your fellow developers to use Miro or virtual whiteboarding in general? How intuitive did they find working with Miro?
Yeah, we have two questions there.
Yeah.
I remember having to come up with a proposal to do drag and drop in a different way in our application. I sketched up a couple of flows of how the current, like, state machine, if we can call it, like how the application transitions when you start to drag and drop things, how it transitions to different states and behaves differently based on what state you're at.
Okay.
And near that complicated flow, I had a simplified solution which kind of split each type of drag and drop in a specific kind of interaction. And I went into the meeting with that board opened. I shared my screen and I started to talk and present the ideas that I had. And it's actually in that meeting, one of our colleagues that is mostly working with backend had a confusion about the terms. And I started to draw things near the drag and drop flow related to the questions that he had. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the moments that I think was key, because they saw how I worked in Miro. I mean, I just drag and drop a couple of texts and added some background colors and arrows between them. And that made him come back to Miro later and look over the explanations.
Right.
This happened a couple of times. We had another moment with the juniors when I onboarded them with, where was it? With this. Mm-hmm. It looks, I think it looks very bad compared to what we have right now, but it kind of got the job done and it made them come back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. So you're basically kind of accidentally kind of triggered an aha moment for people who haven't seen something like this before, and they're like, "Oh, you can do it this way. Yeah. That's so cool." So kind of like kind of get their buy-in by showing them how it actually,
like showing two versions
right?
Is always a good idea. That's actually a strategy that we have for clients as well.
Yeah, it's a really great way to kind of show, okay, this is how your life could be, and this is how it currently is. So like it's up for you to decide. So it's really nice to see that you approached it this way. So everyone, I think the lesson here is show. If you want to get buy-in for something, just show it, and people are gonna be way more comfortable in kind of exploring that.
Yeah, that's right.
Another question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
It took about 2 weeks of every other day talking with someone and showing them something in Miro.
Right. And how did they find the interface?
People started to say, let's make a Miro board for this. So it wasn't just me. Other people started to say, hey, let's do this.
All right. That's great.
You know, it's cool how Miro, in our universe, it starts to become like, let's Google this or let's Uber to that place. Now it's like, let's go into Miro and do this.
Yeah, let's Miro. Like we personally use it. Like we started using it just for like user flows, but then we kind of do our social media scheduling on it. So like kind of finding ways of doing it in there. So
okay, so the next question that we have is how intuitive did they find working with Miro?
How is kind of like the ramp up period until they kind of learn how to move around and create things? How did the team receive that?
I think it was very good. they pretty much knew how to use it because most of the visual tools that we used in the past also work like this, but they have a bunch of extra stuff on the left, on the right, and on the right side.
Okay, so it was like more of a simplified.
Everybody knows now how to drag and drop, resize, copy, paste, undo, press delete to delete, and drag and drop things from the left sidebar.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Makes
They
sense.
kind of summarized the Miro demo right there. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Okay.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
I wanted to read the next question, but
go for it.
Go
just
ahead.
read them and go through them as you wish.
Regarding the Jira integration, we wanted to have that, but we need to give admin access to the entire infrastructure in Jira, and that was a complete no-go for the company that hosts Jira for us. So we have a self-hosted Jira for reasons that are unknown for me. I think we have some sort of private-ish clients that don't want to, maybe there's some security issues involved there. And we could not give access to the entire Jira infrastructure to Miro.
Right. Yeah, it's a really great point. Awesome.
And
what about the last?
Yeah. Did you use any specific pre-built templates from the library that Miro has?
Yeah, I mean, I started, that's how I started. So I added the mind map for myself. That's how I got into using Miro. And when I added I don't know, I was just procrastinating, if you will, with the flowchart. This kind of made me want to use it more. It's like, okay, this looks pretty. This is like the prettiest flowchart I've seen or something like that. And I wanted to use it a little bit more. Actually, this template, if we look right down here, is the core of this. So I basically inserted the template, changed the colors a bit, and oh, why is it so low quality? Anyway. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna check here the.
It's kind of re-emphasizing the first question. So yeah, I think we got. So any other questions you folks might have, you can just drop them in the chat. And kind of before we wrap up and go through a quick round of feedback, is there any other questions you have for Vlad regarding how to supercharge your development team's powers using Miro? Last chance. All right, Vlad, looks like you were very, very straight to the point with your presentation. Everyone got exactly what you wanted to.
Interesting. Who knows?
Oh, no. Well, I don't think that's the case, because we're actually going to find out. Let's see. So everyone, if you could just go to the Miro board right now, we would really love to get your feedback and thoughts. So if you follow our cursors and see where everyone is, we have two kind of feedback areas. The one at the top, the one kind of the knowledge survey. What we have to do in this scenario, kind of look at the 4 quadrants that are created in here and just drag and drop the yellow voting dots in the quadrant that you believe fits best with what you've learned today. So looking at the knowledge that you've gained and then degree of knowledge application. So just whether you learned a lot but doesn't apply to you, or you learned a lot and you can apply it all, just drag and drop the bubbles, the yellow voting dots in the area that represent the best scenario for you. So you can get an idea of how helpful this was to you. Take a few seconds.
I'm happy to see my colleagues helping out with even in the odds here.
That's good. I think your case is a really great example of how people can start exploring passively. Like you say, you're just procrastinating in Miro, and then you just discover the flow chart, and it's like, oh, I can actually apply this in my job, right? So I think even if for some people this doesn't apply 100%, I think it still gives you the power, and we hope that it gives you the motivation to go in and try things out. Maybe you're just accidentally going to find a use case where Miro is going to come in really handy for you. So I think you can say that there's virtually no limit to what you can do in here. It's the same when you have a piece of paper and can draw anything on it. Same, you can do that digitally. So you can do anything you want. You can
I think we moved all of our client work.
Yeah, like if you think about, like, we were using things like Trello. We don't use that anymore. We just completely ditched Trello as a tool because you have the same kind of Kanban boards. You can just drag them from one column to another built into Miro. Like, why have two separate apps and products where you can just have everything in one place, right? So I think no matter how much this applies to your specific job, it might not apply exactly, but try and keep an open mind and probably just give digital whiteboarding a chance in Miro and just see what you come up with. You might actually be surprised. And thank you so much. I can see everyone kind of post their votes in here. So nice.
A lot of yellow dots in the right quadrant.
Yeah, the top right is the winner. So great job, Vlad. And the one at the bottom, people already kind of seen this coming. You have like these three columns that says improvements, accolades, and suggestions, and you have a batch of sticky notes on the left. So just drag them on the areas and tell us what went well, what could be better, and what should come next. What are some other topics that you are interested in? Just let us know.
I actually have a question for everyone here. If you can write in the comments in Zoom, what is your role? Or what is your profession? I'm curious how many developers / technical leads / CTOs / something like that are with us.
Yeah, we can just help Vlad out and just tell us what roles you have, folks. That would be really helpful for him in the Zoom chat. So folks, for the last column for suggestions, like what should come next, this can even be topics. Like if there's something you have in mind, like I want to see how you can do this in Miro. I want to see how you do, I don't know, whatever topics you might be interested in. This helps us scout out some people that might be a great inspiration. So make sure to, if you have any thoughts on that, like what other topics you're interested in, we're happy to hear those. We're gonna be super receptive to them. Right. People are going to be really pro here, changing colors of sticky notes. That's just like next level.
Exactly.
All right, perfect. So make sure to show Vlad this one, and he can take a note of all the great things that you recommend. And here, we're also gonna listen to all of your feedback. So thank you so much. Just as a note, this entire board will be available to you for 1 week after today. So you're going to be able to come back and reference it and kind of reiterate some things that Vlad has walked you through. So don't be afraid that you're going to lose track of what we talked about here.
I think it would be interesting to take a look at suggestions. So what should come next? So someone wrote that it would be interesting to see how to organize agile ceremonies in Miro.
That is really great. So yeah, and it says that the email for the presentation said it was 6 p.m., but it started 5 p.m. So we took note of that issue. We tried to solve that issue immediately. So sorry for those who were a little confused by that. We're looking to improve
great
that.
Feedback.
Yeah, but a lot of great feedback. So Vlad, I think you nailed this one perfectly.
Yeah.
Great to see all this feedback. All right, everyone. That was it. If you don't have any other further questions, thank you for being part of the 5th EMA VMUG.
Fourth.
And it's the 5th one, actually. The 5th EMA VMUG. We forgot our own VMUG. And here at the right here where we kind of end everything, just we can keep the conversation going in the online Miro community. So if you see the yellow bubble, you can click on the top right link. You see there's a tiny Miro icon in there that you can click on to go to the Miro community. And then you can also follow us and follow Miro and all the events that are being created. These VMUGs are not only for the European, Middle East, and Africa region. They're also done for the US. So we're going to find a lot of different events on that link. So feel free to check them out. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, for joining us. Thank you so much, Vlad, for being an amazing presenter and for walking us through some of the magic that you do with Miro. And thank you everyone who joined us and lasted until the end.
Thanks for the opportunity. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Stay happy. And yeah, all in all the best to you.
And use Miro.
Yeah. Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.